Hello, this is Gary and Chuck, and we're here to talk about Fable the Journey, and thanks to Connect to Digital World for coming along today.
A few weeks ago, Microsoft invited us to Lionhead Studios to take a sneak peek at the forthcoming game Fable the Journey. While we were there, we got to play several hours of the game and also talk to Gary Carr and Charles Griffiths all about it. So here's the interview with the guys, along with some new footage. Hope you enjoy it.
Okay, I'm Gary Carr, I'm Creative Director on Fable the Journey.
I'm Charles Griffiths, I'm a designer on Fable the Journey.
Tell us a little bit about Fable the Journey. How does it fit in with the current Fable series?
I'll let you go.
Well, this story takes place after Fable 3. It kind of slots in there, and it's actually looking at quite a different story to the previous Fables. All the other Fable games have dealt with characters that are heroes, they're part of the heroic bloodline. And this one's quite different because you're actually kind of an average bloke. He's a dweller from a tribe, and that this story is kind of about how he becomes a hero from discovering these gauntlets. So it's actually quite a different plot to what we've dealt with before.
So this takes place about 50 years after Fable
That's
3.
right, yeah.
What's changed in Albion in those 50 years?
Well, I mean, Reaver's established himself a little bit more. You can still see signs of some of the previous characters in the world, but in there you'll be going to be able to see Albion in a really different way in this game. So, like being able to travel right through the world, and from a first-person perspective, you actually I think you get a lot closer to the world than before, because previously, you kind of cover a lot of Albion in the other Fable games, but you fast travel around, you don't really get a sense of how it all connects together. And in this one, you're so close to it, I think fans are going to really enjoy seeing it like that.
I think another little trick we played was to, early on in the game, you get separated from the rest of your travelling dweller group, and you're forced to take an old, long since disused route through Albion. So we kind of take you back in time almost, because we take you deep into an uncharted part of Albion where things haven't necessarily changed since Fable 1 days. So it allows us to introduce magic and some more fantastic looking creatures, because these things are long since forgotten. So it's kind of a great mechanic to allow us to actually go through all the previous Fable games and handpick our favourite types of creatures and regions.
Once we go into that area, we soon run into Teresa.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, we've kept Teresa for all our Fable games. There was a couple of things we wanted to do. We spoke to the Fable team and said, oh look, what is it we haven't really done? And one of the things was we hadn't really told Teresa's story. And there was a lot of debate about the Spire and whether we really have utilised this sort of central core of the game enough. And there were two areas we really wanted to sort of weave into our story. So Teresa's story gets told in this game. We explain her. She kind of unburdens herself on Gabriel throughout the game. So she kind of talks about what she regrets about some of the previous things she's done. So you get a sense of her character for the first time. You still don't necessarily know her motivation for everything, but you definitely get a sense she's got a lot to deal with, keeping Albion going. So we tell her story, and we definitely explain a little bit more what the Spire's all about. So we brought Zoe Wanamaker along again, and I think she's pleased this time around. We've given her some real deep storylines, because to some extent with an RPG version of Fable, because you can play around so much, it's very difficult to put a lot of depth into the writing for characters, because you can just play with the story so much. So because this is a lot more of a linear story, we were able to really write for the character part, so she was quite pleased to get a decent script for once, I think.
Excellent. Obviously, walking around, or rather riding around in Albion is different in this game. We're on a horse, and more importantly, we're using Connect. So what were the challenges for A, having a horse, and B, Connect?
Over to the designer of the system.
Well, I think making the travelling mechanic to start with, I think there was an opportunity here to do something that was absolutely right for Connect. It was starting fresh and being able to come up with a travelling system that was going to be completely unique to it and plays to the strengths of Connect. And that's what it's a great fit with the horse and cart. The idea of it, holding the reins in your hands, is something it's genuinely different, and I think it actually lets you experience and travelling in a game in a different way than you could do on a controller. It's genuinely fun and interesting and different in that way. So being able to kind of innovate in that way with Kinect was a really exciting part of it.
As I think, when you play any game, you project yourself into a game, and one thing that we wanted to sit down to play this game because it's a long play game. So we didn't want a situation where it felt strange to be sitting down and doing something else. So it felt weird if we were trying to come up with a system on foot, for example, where you were running around, you're sitting down. It doesn't put you into that world. So when we had the idea for the horse, it seemed natural to put you on the horse and cart because here we are, we're sat on a sofa, and quite naturally you kind of feel this could easily, it's not a massive stretch to think, I'm just bring my arms up and I'm controlling a wagon. And that just put you in the world a lot easier than, it felt quite natural, so it was great. Almost day one, we landed on this idea and Chuck went away and worked very hard on a system which felt like you had that kind of control, because it is it's beautiful and analogue. You do feel, when you get more used to it and you get used to the terrain types, you've got real fine-tuned control of that horse, and it's not something you get straight away. It takes a few hours to master it, and that's quite important because we didn't want it to be a complete, this is all you do. We make it far more challenging later on in the game. Travelling becomes very much one of the skills you need to acquire as you get further into the world.
But it is still like the natural usage was the key thing, to get stuff that actually, I think there's a temptation with Kinect to then focus so much on the gestures that you're doing and the way that you're going to do them. But we wanted to put the game in the game, just have the controls be stuff that people can pick up and play, and then they can focus on the actual experience of what they're doing in Albion, and they're not thinking all the time about how do I do this, how do I do that. It's not about loads of complicated gestures. It's natural inputs.
Were there any real challenges that you guys faced in developing Kinect as the controller? Because obviously, having now played it for a few hours, it is really good and really intuitive sitting down. So was it difficult to come up with?
I think we landed on a lot of the mechanics really early on, and it's one of the many games where I don't think we've had to iterate as much. What we've had to do is, the iteration has been around user research. So we knew we wanted to play with magic. We knew we wanted to fight fantastic creatures with magic, and that's really a lot of the game. We have got puzzle solving, and we have got side kind of interaction quests. Sometimes you're doing some simple things like putting some escaped chickens back in a chicken pen. These little simplistic things as well. But we knew what the mechanics were. What's taken the time is seeing hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of different people of all shapes and sizes play our game, and just realise that not everybody does the same thing. Not everybody moves in the same way. Not everybody interprets what they're supposed to do in the same way. So there's been a lot of effort to try and make sure that there's not a very exact thing you have to do, or because people just, not everyone's coordinated. Not everyone is able to interpret what they think they're supposed to do. So we've had to take a lot of samples from a lot of players, and that's been the challenge really. Keeping it simple, but making sure it's robust enough to cope with different users and body shapes.
And when's the game out?
Well, the game is out in Europe on the 12th of October and US on the 9th of October. Yeah, our American cousins have got it a few days before us.
Thank you very much, guys, for your time.
Thank you very much. Cheers.